Okay, once again, May 25th, 2023. This is going to be the Blue Path video, this for the spring season for Havenwood with commentary. The perimeter path, which is the red path, has its set of videos. It runs, kind of circumnavigates the 22 plus minus acres of woods here at Havenwood. The spring loop path is a shorter path that kind of walks from the main house in a loop by the spring that the main spring that feeds the freshwater lake and the stream that connects the two. And this is the main path that most people traverse, the blue path. It doesn't really have any other name. I don't think it ever has had any other name than just the path or the blue path. And I call it the blue path because I just chose to mark it with blue dots so no one would get lost when they walked it. That's basically it. It's a good place also to start your visit to Havenwood because you'll get an immediate appreciation for the work that's been done here. This glen that you're looking at here has been here for decades. That was done by heavy machinery. And I had nothing to do with that. But essentially the 22 plus acres that are generally shown in these 6 videos, 3 with commentary, 3 without, almost all of that acreage used to look like this. This is essentially the last acre to acre and a half that has not been harmonized. And by harmonized, I say that because that's what I'm doing. Not only is it aesthetically pleasing to turn, and not only does it feel good for us humans to turn land that looks like this into land that looks and feels like this. You'd better be able to see it down there. I'll show you in a minute. But generally, I'm doing this also for the land, because what happens when humans get a hold of land, well, what's often the case, unfortunately, is humans tend to be about dominance, raping, pillaging, dominating the land for their own personal benefit, which ends up harming the land. So this particular tract of land here at Havenwood has been pillaged as a pig farm. It's been mostly clear-cut twice in the last 300 years. And then, as you can tell right here, it's been mined for iron ore. This gully right here is an iron ore mine, iron ore gully, where they would dig out iron ore. And of course, what happens then is the rains come and it erodes and takes away all the topsoil, right? So, and when the land is clear-cut, at least in this region, this climate zone of the world, this region of the world, the way the earth heals herself, I put a gender on it, but people tend to talk about Mother Nature, so I'm just sticking with it, is rapid chaotic growth, kind of like a really thick scab. And then over time, storms come and animals come, and maybe certain diseases come, or certain plants compete with each other. And the most adaptable or best situated tree will remain, and others will die out and not grow as much. They're all competing for water. They're all competing for soil nutrients. They're all competing dramatically and kind of rapidly for light. And this kind of response, you see, is not really what nature's after. Nature, bends steadily, slowly but surely towards harmonious coexistence, where everything is working for the betterment of its neighbor, for the most part. I could go into depth on that and why predators and prey fits into that paradigm. That's a topic for another day. The point is, what I'm doing with this land is I am attempting to do, and have attempted to do in 4 years, what nature would have in a much better way done, but exuding a lot more energy without my help in 400 years. So this land in 400 years would eventually look much more like this land, with all the trees much bigger, of course. Anyway, and I thought I would try to save all that strife and struggle by giving nature a boost, kind of apologizing for my forefathers and what they did to the land and saying, hey, how about I give you a lending hand? And the animals that live here are thrilled with it as well. It's fun to sit back in places and be really quiet and still and watch all the animals roam around and enjoy themselves in the work. So that's the primary motivation as far as the highest calling is concerned: helping nature, helping the animals, helping, for lack of a better term, the planet. Yeah. It also hopefully will serve a purpose in having subsequent owners. There's no such thing actually as an owner of the land. That's a ridiculous concept. That's a man-made construct. We're all guests here, and we would all do well if we would start acting like it before it's too late. And yet, the thought is that if an owner gets Havenwood someday legally and believes they own it and can do with it what they will, and it looked like this, it's much more likely for them not to see the beauty and to treat it poorly, or to treat it, or to ravage the land for their own monetary or who knows what benefit, as opposed to steward the land. And yet when land looks more like this, and you'll see a lot more beautiful sections than this as we proceed along, then the owner of the land, even if they are completely selfish beings, will instinctively, it's my hope, be more inclined to cherish the land, to at least not screw it up, and let it continue to be the thriving home for, what is actually literally millions of my animal friends, and a beautiful place to visit for all the human friends of mine who happen to come in those subsequent centuries to visit. So that's the intention, anyway, to set the intention of the work. And so we'll get down here to the beginning of the blue path, and we'll walk it, and I'll talk about it a little bit, and then when I'm done walking it, I'll turn the video off and turn it back on again and walk it in reverse in silence. And that way, if you want to walk it yourself, you can walk it whenever you want, for as long as it's on the internet. And yeah, and you can, even if you can't come here in person, you can visit online. This is a beautiful bench. My brother and I made this bench. We made about, I think, 6 of these stone benches on the land? 8? I think 6. But this is my personal favorite. It's a beautiful place to come sit. Here, I'll sit down here for a second and show you. You sit down right here. It's nice, very stable. And then when a couple of these limbs will be pruned out of the way, and every fall, generally there's a big bonfire with brush. I don't personally burn in the summer because that's a home for a bunch of my friends. But in the fall, you can kind of light it, and whoever is still living there, they don't have babies. The babies have all left. They're all born in the spring. So there are a few residents that then scurry away, and you apologize, but you can clear that brush pile. And this is, for me personally, the only brush pile I ever burn. All the other brush piles you'll see are permanent critter homes, intentionally made for the animals, mostly in these erosion dishes I just pointed out to stop the erosion. And they're just going to sit there until in 300 years from now they turn into earth berms or turn into dirt. But this one is technically ready to be burned. But maybe it even won't be. Maybe it'll sit here and it'll melt down into dirt. I don't know. But this is still a very nice, beautiful place to sit, especially in the fall. When the leaves have turned and are starting to fall, this is a pretty magical spot. But anyway, continue onward. This portion of the blue path we're on now has been named the Moss Way for pretty obvious reasons. When the light is a little brighter and the rain has just fallen, this place is almost literally aglow in that beautiful light green that you see there. And ideally, if I was ever to become the steward of this place, which looks highly unlikely, another reason for these videos, but if that were to ever happen, of course I would immediately open the place to the public. 365 days a year, sun up to sundown. And then as the foot traffic increased, the moss would also increase. And eventually, if you had enough respectful foot traffic here, 50, 100 years, this would just be a solid carpet of moss, which could be, I don't know, it's a cool thought. It's a cool thought. It's still, even without it being completely carpeted, it's really a lovely path to walk on. And this is the most recent work I've done here to the left. This was one of the last sections. And if you look way up top, you can kind of tell there's from the top down, I finished about the top 50 along the crest is done, and of course the first 150 feet up the hill is essentially finished. It's been pruned. The fallen pine trees have been diced up with the chainsaw and put in these gullies. The gullies have been covered with the brush that I cut. But you can kind of tell there's a ribbon about 2/3 of the way up that would be for another season. It didn't quite finish, but you can still get the feel. This entire hillside used to be just covered with branches and brush and rotting logs, and it was crisscrossed, and which is, in nature's terms, fine, right? That melts over time, over hundreds of years, that turns into dirt. It's not like it was a problem. But the soil is already loamy enough here, and it didn't need the additional rotting nutrients, and there was the problem of the erosion gullies. So I was able to fill those in and make critter houses, and it looks and feels really quite beautiful. So, oh, and speaking of erosion gullies, here is the main erosion gully on the property. I got a lot of iron ore out of here. That is deep. That's about 15 feet deep. It runs way up there, all the way down. And you can see this has been a wonderful place to bring chunked up trees that I've felled, or chunked up trees that have fallen. And eventually, as I keep working, if I'm allowed to keep working, this will be completely full. And millions of animals will be living in there over the years. And it will eventually turn into dirt and fill that erosion gully in. That's at least the thought. That will be long after I am dead and have left this planet, and left this life. And yet, it will happen eventually. Yeah, this is a pretty nice time of the year. Early spring, when the leaves aren't quite this big, when the light is like this, it's a little more magical. And of course, there's that perfect 1 week window every fall when the leaves have all turned. Most of them have turned, and most of them have not fallen. And one of these days, I'd like to make a series of videos in fall to catch that perfect week when everything is, yellow and gold here. And this is my second favorite time of year. Fall and spring, for me personally, I think are the two most beautiful times of the year to walk the trails here. Though winter and summer are fine too. This is the base of before I talk about that, you can see up here a sandstone picnic table my brother and I made back in 2006. There used to be a path that ran up to it, lined by monkey grass. It was really pretty. And it needs some repair, and it's really, really, really heavy. So I purposefully did not weed eat it this time for the video, just because there are people who rent here and sometimes visit here. There's an Airbnb apartment here, and I didn't want visitors to be tempted to sit down there and maybe have one of those benches collapse until I could do some repair work on it. So I'm kind of letting it grow up on purpose. This stairwell here, when I first got here, this portion up to the first railroad tie, was already in place. And those who were walking this ridge trying to come down here, it was just too steep. So there needed to be a switchback cut in. So in 2006, Pretty sure it was the spring of 2006. I got me a mattock and a shovel, and I just carved in this switchback, and then with my brother's help, we set 27 railroad tie stairs in, and then I would just take a tarp up this hill, and in the fall, when all the leaves are gone, you can just look around before the leaves, actually just before the leaves have fallen, you can look around and you can see green spots, and those green spots are moss-covered rocks. And so I would put all the moss-covered rocks on a tarp, and I would pull them downhill, and I lined this path with moss-covered rocks. And then over the years, what's happened is, it's been, 17 years now? 17 years. Only one stair has disintegrated in 17 years. It's pretty impressive. Railroad ties. I can't recommend them highly enough. But the moss has done far better than I had ever envisioned. It's really cool. And again, if you catch this when it's a little warmer, just after a rainfall, it is something to behold. It just lights up, almost literally. It feels like it's literally glowing. There's that table I was talking about. Normally a very nice place to sit. One of these days I'll fix that. I'll get on that. It's a nice table. But here's where all the rock work really began, stacking all the stone. And you can see how the moss has just made almost a solid wall. It really is quite remarkable. And of course the deer come down and knock some of the stones down. That's just part of it. But this has been, I've done very little maintenance on this in 17 years, which is really remarkable. And I think this is probably one of, if not my favorite place to be. Here's the only bench that I made myself. Notice it's much smaller size. But me and St. Francis, we've got a thing. I like that guy a lot. And that St. Francis statue there is very peaceful. And this is a beautiful place to sit. And early in the morning, if you come up here on this little side path, you come up and you say, hey to St. Francis, what's up, Frank? And you sit down here on this little bench, and you just are really still. There are just animals and birds all over the place. It is such a beautiful place just to sit and be. Really, really nice. Yeah. Yeah, truly wonderful. Yeah. We made it to the top of the hill, and as I mentioned in the perimeter path video, this is where the red path meets the blue path. Red path heads off to the right, which we've already covered in the other video. The yellow dot is for the cemetery. You can follow the yellow dots to the local cemetery with a lot of old graves up on that hill up there. But the blue path here continues to the left. Section right here was always tricky, but I just recently came through and kind of lightly pruned it again, and it really does feel good now. The path used to sneak between this vine and this pine tree, and then I kind of had it curve here. I'll fill it in with some dirt to level it out a little better, but that feels better to go that way. There are a couple of places where the paths feel like they need adjusting, but for the most part they feel pretty good. Here's the top of that area I was talking about that still needs cleanup. And you can tell if you look, there are a lot of immature pines that have to go. There's a pine that's already died and fallen. I got to undercut that with the chainsaw and clean it up. And I'll end up making next cleaning season, which is always the fall. You always work when you're going to cause the animals the least amount of trouble, which is late October to early April, mostly. Earlier in April, early in October, and later in April if it's a really cold day. But that'll be just a huge critter house right there on that little plateau. And the animals will dig that. But that's, again, part of the never-ending work here, part of the vision. My vision for this place, what I always thought I would turn it into, I think what you're looking at here is 30% of it. It's fair to say I've done about a third of what I wanted to do, and I'm incredibly happy with this third, I will say. We've reached the point where, if I were to die soon, I would be able to think about this place and what I've done here in these last 5,000+ man hours over the last 4 years of work. And it just feels really good. And I've just loved it. I have loved every minute of it, without any exaggeration. And if it could have worked out, I could have spent double the time here, I would have spent double the time here. So yeah, lots more I'd like to do, and I've reached that point where I've invested so much that it just feels good. Makes me smile. I know the planet's happy. I know the land is happy. I know the animals are thrilled. And that's just, it's great to be able to sacrifice for others where you see immediate joy and benefit, And this is definitely one of those services. It's been an honor, not to be, kind of goofy, but when people say an honor and a privilege, this has literally been an honor and a privilege to work on this place. So much fun. Oh, if anybody, by the way, knows what this is, this tree/shrub, if anybody knows what this is, send me an email. Rediscovering Peace 99, Rediscovering Peace, then the numbers 9 and 9 at protonmail.com. I know what most of the other species are here, but I love that. And they're not that common here, and the ones that are here are really pretty, and I don't know what they are. So if anybody knows, let me know. We had a resident armadillo, and when you have a resident armadillo, they moved in from Texas, and they aerate the soil. I mean, as long as they're not overrunning the place, which they're not, all they're doing is just digging stuff up, and it's like a rototiller. It has its purpose, but that's what this is. And I think our little guy lives right in there. I think that's where he lives. Right on, dude. Anyway, this is the only area that actually looks like that. You'll see some little digging outs here and there, but for the most part, I think he's just jamming here. Oh, look at this. This tree got weighed down by this. Fix that. Yeah, it's better. Yeah. That's what I do when I walk the paths. I just walk along and just pick up sticks and throw them in these little erosion gullies. There's another little erosion gully there. They're everywhere. They mined iron ore all over here. And so I just fill them in, 200 years, you'll never know that was there. In the meantime, lots of critters. Lots of rabbits and chipmunks and house wrens. Who else is in there? Snakes probably live in there. I don't know. There's another good one right there. That's a real nice critter house. That's a critter condo right there. That's a fine one. This little intersection, this little light orange path is actually, it's a live end, not a dead end. It's a live end. It goes about 50 feet that way. In fact, if I raise the camera up and you look off in the distance, you can see a bench there, and that's where it ends, just about 50 feet. And it's a little promontory where you can just sit. And the sun rises over that way, so in the fall, when the leaves are all gone, you can see the sunrise from that bench. So it's a nice place. This is a really pretty section of land right here too. I really like the way this panned out. Cleaned up real nice. And here's the access road. You saw the the apex of this same access road off to the right up the hill on the perimeter path trail. So we cross this. This is, you know, you can, sometimes when I'm doing my chainsaw work, you can drive up this direction from the main garden down here, and you can drive all the way up to that turnaround where we were in the perimeter path video and park. And that's a good place to kind of keep your chainsaw equipment and your chainsaw gas, and don't have to walk that far to refuel and keep working. So that's a good spot. Sometimes I park the truck right down here at this turnaround. This is, you know, this access road ends here and that other one ends up there, and that's a good place. Good to get close to the work. This is a white tributary. This path curves off to the left here and down a set of stairs that I made, and when we do the silent walk of the blue path, I'll come back this way so you'll see it. But we'll walk the entirety of the blue path with commentary here, and then when I turn around, we'll skip this little section. It curves to the left here and goes down past the still, but it'll just cut this corner off. We'll come up here on the way back in the silent walk. You'll see that little detour. It's a really nice little path. And this was the original path, and it's of course wide enough for a truck. Let me get this branch out of the way here. Yep. And then these other paths just were made bit by bit over the last 30 years. About half of all the paths on these videos were made by me, and about half were made by others. But I've been maintaining all of them off and on for 30 years, and full-time pretty much. Well, half-time for the last 4 years, essentially. This is the still. This was where most of the illegal alcohol for the entire county was made back, I believe, through the early 60s. Dade County used to be a dry county. And so this was alcohol, this was Moonshine Central. And it was a huge still, as you can see. There's even an article about it in some newspaper somewhere, when the sheriff came in with his axe and pretty much destroyed it and left it exactly like that. Has essentially not moved since it was destroyed by the sheriff back in 60 whatever. Late 50s, maybe? I'm not exactly sure. But anyway, that's an interesting side note. And this is the back side of that serpentine brush pile critter condo I made, and then the animal from the spring loop path, the animal companion cemetery is right over there, just directly there. So this kind of separates the two. And then when this big pine tree falls, it's very big. You see that big pine tree? I mean, that is a lot of weight, and eventually that's going to go. That little root ball right there cannot hold it much longer. Next big 2 or 3 storms, it's coming down, and I'll cut it up, and I'll put the chunks of the logs along that ridge and join this brush fence or this brush pile in a serpentine with that one over there. And then it'll be kind of a nice flowing wall to kind of separate the regions, you know. It'll look nice. And again, you can't go wrong by giving homes to, you know, thousands of your animal friends. Can't go wrong there. All right, it looks like someone has rented at the barn apartment, so I'm not going to get too close with talking. I'll move a couple of more feet and kind of show you the barn apartment from the back. And then I'm going to cut the video off, turn around, and come back in silence. All right? So again, if you have any questions about any of these videos or any of the paths or the work that I've done, the hows, the whys, the whens, anything, send me an email, rediscoveringpeace99. That's rediscoveringpeace, one word, plus the numbers 99 at protonmail.com. And I'll get back to you with the answers whenever I can. All right, so we'll kind of finish this commentary walk in silence, and then I'll turn around and we'll walk it in reverse in silence. Take care, guys.